Hi, everybody. Hammond Mayor Thomas McDermott Jr. here, giving you the latest update on COVID-19 and Governor Holcomb's latest order and how it affects us here in Hammond, Indiana. So I wanted to take a few minutes, and I appreciate the people that are watching. I want to start off and thank Lori for helping us make sure that all Hammond residents can understand what we're talking about. Obviously, this is a very important issue. Governor Holcomb placed Lake County, Indiana in the red, which, because of our 7-day positivity rate, got over 15%. In fact, in Lake County, our 7-day positivity rate is 15.81%, which is worse than it ever was during the first phase already. Looking around our neighbors at their positivity rate, Porter County's positivity rate is 16.35 and rising. Lake County's is rising also. LaPorte County's is 12.25% and rising. They're in the orange, so less severe restrictions in the orange as opposed to Lake County and Porter County. Newton County is on going down, but it's at 18.73. So in Newton County, they're much worse than what we're experiencing here in Lake County. In Marion County, in comparison, they're a lot more stringent than what we're going through right now. They're in the orange, 12.69, but it's rising also. Obviously, this is a serious situation, serious enough where Governor Holcomb again placed us on further restrictions, and that will have ramifications on how we do business in the city of Hammond. So I wanted to get into how Governor Holcomb's order affects us here in Hammond, and I wanted to announce a couple things. I may as well start off right now. I want to thank Councilwoman Katrina Alexander, Hammond City Councilwoman, for being diligent on this issue and being vigilant with the mayor in regards to the coronavirus task force and how strongly she felt that we should be meeting weekly during this crisis, because we are actually worse off now than we ever were in March and April. And I agree with the councilwoman, and I promised her that we would resume the coronavirus task force meetings, and that's the first thing I want to announce on this podcast. Well, I guess this isn't a podcast, sorry. But I want to announce that we are resuming the coronavirus task force meeting on Wednesdays. So we plan to air those live on Go Hammond TV like we did before. We will Zoom our meeting with the people that are invited to the meeting, and then we will have those meetings visible from the public through Go Hammond TV. So like we did before, we will stream our Zoom meeting through Go Hammond. You can watch it on Facebook. We have a bigger audience that way, and we figure it's easier to do it that way. So the coronavirus task force will be resuming next week, day before Thanksgiving, starting on Wednesday, and it'll continue weekly until Lake County is out of the red, which could be most of the winter. Let's just be honest. Governor Holcomb placed Lake County in the red as of 11/15/2020. This order is valid until December 12th, 2020, or we have 2 weeks of improvement in the 7-day positivity rate. And as I mentioned a couple minutes ago, Lake County went from orange to red, and we're currently rising at the level of 15.81. They project us to keep rising for a while, which means we're going to get further and further into the red. So we have to be below 15 for 2 weeks before these restrictions will be removed, per Governor Holcomb's order. Right now in the city of Hammond, the city of Hammond requires all businesses and government buildings, all businesses in the city of Hammond to wear face mask coverings while inside. This is a mandate from the city of Hammond using the authority granted under Governor Holcomb's order. There's a mask mandate in the city of Hammond. Inside. Engage in social distancing. These are obvious. Wear face coverings outside when it's not feasible to maintain 6 feet of social distancing. Let me say that again. For outdoor events in the city of Hammond, you must wear face coverings when it's not feasible to maintain 6 feet of social distancing. These are the laws, these are the rules we're following in Hammond right now. You also must wear face coverings while using public transportation, ride shares, or taxis. We do have exceptions to the face covering rule, and I'll go into the exceptions. When you're engaged in a sporting activity, the Sportsplex, the Gene Shepherd Center, the Civic Center will be open during this crisis in accordance with the governor's order. If you're engaged in a sporting activity, you do not need to wear a face mask. You do not need to wear a face mask if you're speaking to a public audience with 6 feet of separation. I guess this applies to me. When I'm talking, I do not have to talk with a mask on if I'm 6 feet removed from people. This applies to anybody speaking to a public audience. Teachers, professors, elected officials, anybody speaking to a public audience. You do not need to wear a face mask if you're consuming food or drink in a restaurant. I think we've learned these rules through the lockdown, but this still applies at this point. When you're seated in a restaurant, you do not need to wear a face mask. If you get up to go to the restroom in the restaurant, you must wear a face mask while you're walking. Servers in the restaurant must wear face masks. Anybody working in the restaurant must use a face mask. The only time you do not need to is when you're seated at a table. Restaurants and bars are allowed to be open under the governor's mandate, and the city of Hammond plans to follow the governor's mandate. However, in restaurants and bars, all patrons must be seated, like restaurants. If they can't be standing in groups, they can't be violating social distancing. If they're walking around, they must wear a mask. If they're standing on their feet in a bar, they must wear a mask. All seating must allow for 6 feet of separation in restaurants and bars. Buffets and self-service are discouraged. I know, for instance, Horseshoe Casino does not offer a buffet during this ordeal. Right now, the city of Hammond does not plan to be more restrictive than the state of Indiana allows in regards to restaurants and bars. I've talked to numerous restaurants, owners, restaurant, employees that are worried about if we're going to shut them down or not and not allow them to earn a living. And that is not going to come from the city of Hammond now unless things get much worse. It's up to us. If we find that restaurants and bars are flaunting our restrictions, we will police, the mask mandate, the social distancing mandate. If you have complaints about restaurants or bars that are flaunting the social distancing and flaunting the mask rule, please call the mayor's office, call the Hammond Police Department, or call the Lake County Health Department. We are allowing them to be open, but they must follow the rules. I went to the Wheel yesterday, and they're following the rules strictly. So, if businesses can follow the rules, everybody should follow the rules. Church services, not subject to social gathering limits. However, I know most churches are offering, virtual church services and giving dispensation from people to appear at church on a weekly basis. It's not advised. However, they're not subject to the social gathering limits, and I want to make clear that this is an area of confusion in regards to the First Amendment, and it gets real sticky when cities like Hammond get involved in church services, even during pandemics. So I want to make this announcement. The city of Hammond will not be enforcing social distancing or complaints in regards to church services within the city of Hammond. I'm not going to do that. We crossed that line before. I don't plan to do it again. I'm going to leave it up to the pastors and the fathers and the priests to do the right thing in their churches. And obviously these are men and women of God. We trust them to do the right thing in their churches, and I hope that they can follow the governor's orders because we are in a pandemic. But the city of Hammond will not cross that line, the First Amendment line, so to speak. Social gatherings, indoor and outdoor, are defined under the governor's orders as a social gathering. So we have a tree lighting ceremony coming up in the city of Hammond. We have a parade for Christmas coming up in the city of Hammond outside. So you would think that this is not as dangerous. You would think that these may be allowed under the governor's orders. Well, you are wrong if you assume that. We assume that these probably could happen. But under the governor's orders, they cannot happen without a special dispensation from the Lake County Board of Health. So when it comes to the Hammond Christmas Parade, an annual tradition, when it comes to the Hammond tree lighting ceremony, a new annual tradition, we have applied to the Lake County Health Department asking permission for us to be able to hold those events. These events may not happen. Right now, technically under the governor's order, they cannot happen unless the Lake County Health Department agrees with our health plan. So we've applied to see if we can continue forward with those. If we get rejected from the Lake County Health Department, those events will be canceled, unfortunately. Other types of social gatherings: Thanksgiving dinner, wedding receptions, funeral visitations, family gatherings, club meetings, conferences, conventions, sporting events, school events, parades, civic functions, holiday celebrations, fundraisers, etc. These are all limited to 25 people maximum. Plain and simple. Indoor or outdoor. If it's indoor, it's strongly discouraged from having any such events. Indoor, strongly discouraged. We're in the red. This is a real disease that's out there right now. If you want to exceed the 25-person limit, like the city of Hammond, you must submit your health plan to the Lake County Health Department 1 week before the event is to occur and receive approval before it can proceed. Just applying is not good enough. You need to be approved before you can proceed forward with more than 25 people. Violating 25 people in an event without approval from the Lake County Health Department is a violation of the law. Hammond, the city of Hammond right now has no plan currently to limit the hours of operation for bars, nightclubs, or restaurants currently. We can be more restrictive than the governor. Right now, we are following the governor's orders. However, we encourage Hammond restaurants and businesses to promote curbside and online food ordering. Hammond is currently in discussion with the Lake County Health Department regarding if the Christmas parade can proceed forward safely, and we will be in contact soon if we can or cannot. We are also in discussion with the Lake County Health Department regarding if the Hammond tree lighting ceremony can proceed safely as well, and we will be in contact soon. The Hammond Sportsplex, the Hammond Civic Center, and the Gene Shepherd Center will remain open for limited reserved events only, in accordance with Governor Holcomb's order. If you are going to an event, like if you're in a league at the Sportsplex or at the Civic Center or the Shepherd Center, attendance is limited to participants only. If it's a youth event, you get the youth plus one person only, maximum. When inside one of these buildings, unless you're participating in the event, you must wear a face mask. Violation of this order will subject you to expulsion from the building. Again, I wanted to remind you one more time that we are reassembling the Coronavirus Task Force beginning next Wednesday at 10 a.m. It will be on Go Hammond TV. We're making contact with the members from the original task force to see if they'd be willing to get the band back together, so to speak. I know people are monitoring Facebook right now for any questions that may come up that I may not have addressed. Are there any questions out there?
There was some confusion about the Sportsplex, and I think you mentioned, Mayor, youth tournaments are separate from the 25-person limit.
Thank you. Right now, if you're in a tournament at the Sportsplex, the tournament is not canceled right now. So if your tournament's this weekend, if your league is this weekend, you can attend. If it's an adult league, only the participant is allowed in the building. You must wear your mask in the building. Once you get to the bench and you participate in the game, you can take your mask off. Once it's over, you put the mask on and you leave the building. If it's a youth sporting event, the youth obviously is allowed to come in, plus one parent. That's it. Grandma and grandpa cannot come. Aunt and uncle from out of town cannot come. One adult with the participant.
The other question was about casinos. Those fall under the general business restrictions, so they're not limited.
Right now, Horseshoe Casino is allowed to stay open. Casinos in Lake County are allowed to stay open under the governor's order with capacity limitations that were agreed upon between the casinos and the state of Indiana. I want to say 60%.
I think it's 40-some actually.
40-something percent. But they are open.
Social distancing.
Social distancing does apply. Mask mandate is required. I would like to point out that Hammond's Horseshoe Casino was the first casino open after the lockdown, the first casino in the country, possibly, with a mask mandate for everybody that came in. So Horseshoe was way ahead of the game on the mask mandate, and they've been open. They shut down for probably 2 months during the pandemic, and they've been open ever since. So, but they do have limited capacity under the governor's order.
Just a couple questions about schools. I think you should, that'll be Wednesday when you have the task force.
We have questions about Hammond Schools, and if this applies to them. I have, as I often do, I remind people that mayor of the city of Hammond, most mayors in Indiana do not have authority over the school cities. The school city is run by a superintendent of schools in Hammond. His name is Scott Miller. I'm hoping Scott will be on the coronavirus task force. I imagine he probably will because he's a great superintendent. And if he agrees to be part of our task force, he will be on our meeting on Wednesday and will be available to answer these types of questions. You got any, John?
I saw bowling alleys, but that's business.
General business, yeah.
Bowling alleys, general business.
Yeah, league, same thing.
Leagues, same thing. Phil, you get any? Thank you, Lori. I appreciate you very much for helping us. I tried to talk nice and slow and clear so that we can get through to everybody. We had over 300 people watching this. Again, on Wednesday, we will do the coronavirus task force meeting with everybody that's part of the task force. So it starts at 10 a.m. Thank you. Again, this is Hammond Mayor Thomas McDermott Jr. announcing new COVID restrictions. If you want to watch this, you can play it again. We will post it on Go Hammond's Facebook page. Thank you very much. Be safe. Wear your mask.